Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today, and we hope that you and your families are healthy and fine during this period. My name is Denise from the Secretariat of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Welcome to this webinar titled Supporting Cities Transition from Diesel to Soot-Free Engine Technologies. This is part one, and we'll be talking about Jakarta and Dar es Salaam. And this is organized by the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, the International Council on Clean Transportation, the United Nations Environment Programme, and Breathe Life, with support from other partners of the CCAC Heavy Duty Vehicles Initiative, which are the governments of Canada, Switzerland, and the United States. So the Climate and Clean Air Coalition is a voluntary partnership of governments, international organizations, and other civil society organizations that are committed to protecting the climate and improving air quality through actions that reduce short-lived climate pollutants. Throughout 2020, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition is offering webinars and virtual meetings in an effort to support our partners around the world. These events will focus on key tools for developing climate and clean air actions, including the latest science on short-lived climate pollutants, experiences of CCAC partners who have overcome challenges to actions and success stories in countries, as well as opportunities for connecting countries with partners who are interested in providing assistance and support. Now, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition works in several sectors, and we have several sector initiatives, and one of which is the Heavy Duty Vehicles Initiative. Now, this initiative of the CCAC is a work stream that's aimed to reduce emissions from heavy-duty vehicles and fuels, and supports efforts that promote soot-free and low-carbon solutions. And one of such activities is the Soot-Free Buses project that aims to directly inform, motivate, secure, and support implementation of commitments made by cities to shift towards soot-free engines. This includes not only developing the soot-free commitments together with the city governments, but also taking the further step of making these commitments a reality, whether through advanced diesel, natural gas, hybrid electric buses, or other soot-free technologies. So we are technology neutral, and we leave the decision up to the city governments in the industry. So today we will have a chance to listen to experts on updates of two interesting cities. One is Jakarta, Indonesia, and the second is Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. These cities are obviously very far away from each other, but let's listen to our speakers, and I'm sure that we will be able to make the connections and derive some lessons that we can also apply in other cities and in our work. But before I continue, just a few reminders about this webinar. This webinar is going to be for 1 hour. The speakers will first be given a chance to give their presentations in the first 40 minutes, and then we will have a chance for questions and discussion afterwards. Now, everyone is muted by default, and if you have a question, in the GoToWebinar software, there's a questions box. So after all of the presentations, I will select some questions and unmute the participants to ask the questions directly. And in the case that there are too many questions and we don't have the time left, please note that we will be recording all of the questions, and we will try to respond to everyone in writing. Finally, this webinar is being recorded, so you can listen to it over and over as much as you want, and also you can share this webinar to your colleagues and networks. The presentations will be shared after the webinar. So I'm not going to take much longer, and already now I would like to give the floor to our speakers. So we'll first be talking about Jakarta, and then later about Dar es Salaam. So for Jakarta, we have two presenters. The topic is e-bus integration in Transjakarta BRT. First, we'll have an intervention by Mr. Bert Fabian, Program Officer of the United Nations Environment Programme Air Quality and Mobility Unit, based in UNEP's Asia Pacific office. And he will be followed by Ms. Faila Sufa, Southeast Asia Director of the Institute for Transportation and Development, that's also located in Jakarta, Indonesia. So, Bert, would you like to speak now? You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Denise, and to the CCAC Secretariat for organizing this. And thank you as well for all the participants for your commitment in continuing our work on sustainable transport and cleaning our transport systems, despite of the situation that we're in. As Denise already mentioned and explained, this webinar is also part of the heavy-duty vehicles initiative of the CCAC, and follows on the initiatives, particularly on Soot-Free bus initiatives, where we support cities to see how we can reduce pollution from many of these from our bus systems. And in this case, for Jakarta, especially last year, the air pollution problem has become severe. And as such, we in UNEP has been requested by the governor of Jakarta to see how we can help. And at that time, we facilitated some meetings coordinated with some stakeholders to see how we can support the better integration of electric buses. The ICCT has also done work and supported the government in terms of looking at the technologies, doing some assessments, and in fact, they have published recently a report on a cost-benefit analysis of technologies for soot-free buses in Jakarta. One of the key things that are important is to implement Euro 6 vehicle emission standards and equivalent fuel quality. So this means 10 parts per million of sulfur in fuel or in diesel, particularly for Indonesia. However, this remains a big challenge in Indonesia. And when we say vehicle emission standards, this is fuel neutral. This is for emissions. And as such, we look at other technologies as well. And electric buses play one role. And as such, together with the Climate Technology Center Network, we have found resources to help the Transjakarta and also the government of Jakarta to integrate electric buses in the system. And our speaker, Fela Sufa of ITDP, they have received the contract to do this work. And as such, she is most appropriate to do the presentation. But in addition to that, UNEP, we in UNEP, together with the International Energy Agency, is following up on a global electric mobility program, wherein we are also trying to get support for Indonesia to see how we can help integrate electric mobility, but also support reduction in emissions, particularly air pollution and greenhouse gas emission. I think without further ado, it would be very nice and very timely for our speaker from ITDP. And for those of you who don't know, ITDP was the one who established or who built the Transjakarta 15 years ago, and which is now the largest bus rapid transit system in the world. So without further ado, Faila, thank you.
Thank you, Bert. So is it everybody can see my presentations now?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's for us, but good morning maybe for others, and good evening as well for others. I am Faila Sufa from ITDP Indonesia, and I would like to have presentation or share presentation on low to emissions journey of Transjakarta BRT system. Yeah. First, I would like to explain briefly about Transjakarta profile. So this screen shows the network map of Transjakarta, and they currently have 13 corridors in operations, and then around 220 routes, and also around more than 1 million passengers. Wait, I have a difficulty one. And they also operate more than 3,000 buses. Actually, now it's 3,548 buses in operations. So as Bert mentioned that Transjakarta has the biggest BRT network in the world. And the screen here shows this is the profile of annual passengers compared to the number of corridors. And when, on this table here, we can see that by adding the number of corridors, will also increase the number of passengers. The number of corridors shows on the bar and number of passengers shows on the line. And when we adding the number of corridors, it's also automatically adding number of passengers served. Sorry. Dennis, could you help me to operate the slide?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know what happened is with my cursors.
Okay, hold on.
On the first slide. Yeah. It's stuck.
Okay. Okay, which page do you want to show?
Next, I think. Next.
Sorry, I'll just hide this.
Yeah, after the yeah. I think this one. Yes. And previously I mentioned about I think next the previous one.
Okay.
Previous one. Yeah, I mentioned about the by adding number of corridor, it will also add number of passenger. It's similar trend also when we add number of bus route. By increasing number of bus route, will also increase the number of passengers. Next. Next, Dennis. Yeah. So the map here is the image of Transjakarta coverage area. So the red dot on this map is the coverage area of Transjakarta within 500 meters from the stations. And then currently Transjakarta coverage area is around 550 kilometers, which this serves around 77% of DKI Jakarta residents. And then their goal is actually like 85% this year. Next. And yeah. So on the left side, this is Transjakarta currently operates around 3,548 buses that I've mentioned before. And then they have a different kind of bus type. There is a different type of buses, medium bus, single bus, 10 meter and 12 meter, and then single low entry bus. They also have double decker bus, articulated bus, and also 4 meters mini buses. And then out of 348 buses, around 10% are CNG buses. And then most of them is using diesel buses. And mostly the mini buses, around 40% of them are still using gasoline. Next. Yeah. And why here having like a soot-free or no emission buses is very important in Jakarta. From this table here on the left, this is the table of sectors with cause air pollution in Jakarta, which transportation sector upon the main air pollution contributor in Jakarta. And the bus produce the second amount of pollutant after the motorcycles. So that's very important for us to have like soot-free or no emission buses operated in Jakarta to reduce the air pollutions. Next. So Transjakarta, actually, they already have electric bus timeline during 2019 to 2020. But the plan in 2020, because of this current situation, will be pending. And then actually, we are currently on the pre-trial phase. And the next plan is to have 20 buses, electric buses, operate during the Formula E that will be held in June 2020, which is also pending. And the initial plan is to have 100 e-buses operated in Jakarta in December 2020. But due to this current situation, all of this plan will be rescheduled again. Next. So this is the image of the bus type of pilot e-bus in Jakarta. So first we have 12-meter and also 7-meter bus by BYD. And we also have 12-meter bus from MRB, which is the local manufacturer. Next. And on last August 2019, we have initial pilot test of Transjakarta electric buses using water gallons or without passengers, weighted maximum 60 tons, and we travel 17 hours travel, and with that that amount of hours, the battery still remain 46%. So on this evaluation, I think this e-bus pilot is performing very well. And on top of that, there are also a campaign done by Transjakarta to introduce this bus to public. Besides with the media, so people can also ride the bus in a closed area. For example, in around the Monument National or during the car-free day event. This is the image of a public campaign that Transjakarta have done. Next. Yeah. And then based on the study and the trial that they have done, there is analysis of fuel reduction cost opportunity for the implementation of e-bus. And if we compare between diesel, CNG, and electric bus, so e-bus has the most cost effective between those two fuel. Next. And this is the figure of the implementation roadmap plan of Transjakarta e-bus deployment. Currently, we are still on the trial stage. And then after that, we plan to have the trial report and also supporting studies from several organizations such as from UNEP CTCN. And then we also need to have supporting regulation as well from the government. And And for the deployment itself, there will be a bus procurement, tender, bus operation, and maintenance procedure that we have to be prepared. Next. And then based off the previous implementation roadmap, this is the table here is Transjakarta e-bus deployment plan from 2019 to 2030. So by 2025, they plan to have like 50% of their fleet will be electric bus, and then by 2030, all of their bus will be e-bus. But unfortunately, maybe this schedule will be shifted because of the current situation. So all of the energy now, they are focusing on combating the COVID-19. Next. And then based on the, and then in terms of the investment plan itself, so Transjakarta will contract operator to procure and then operate and maintain the electric bus as well. It will be done by the operators. For overhead charging, Transjakarta will build the overhead charging at the BRT stations. And operator will also invest in depot and also overnight charging along the bus procurement. And several organizations such as UNEP CTCN and ACCT, they provide technical assistance and capacity for the deployment of e-bus. Next. And for the supporting policy, actually there's still limited policy to support the deployment of e-bus in Indonesia. First is there is a government regulation of 2019 about sales tax on luxurious goods on motorized vehicle. And on this regulation, there are exempt from sales tax on luxurious goods of motorized vehicle if the fuel consumption is less than 28 km per liter or carbon dioxide emission is less than 100 gram per kilometer. And then second, there's also a president regulation on acceleration program on battery electric vehicles. So there will be fiscal and non-fiscal incentive on battery electrical vehicle industrial development here. And the third, this year, the governor of DKI Jakarta, there is a governor regulation on tax incentive for ownership transfer of the vehicles, e-vehicles. Next. Yeah, there are also challenges faced by Transjakarta on deployment of e-bus. First, here we can see that operational and technical challenges. So they have to have like human resources ready, for example, training for mechanics or technicians, and then training for drivers, and new operational training for attendants. And sorry, there are also business plan charging infrastructure challenges as well from business plan and also constructions, and technical specification challenges. For example, new technical specification for e-bus, there's new for them. And then the policy supporting and regulation of technical specification of e-bus. And there should be also standard operating procedure that they haven't familiar as well. New standard operating procedure for e-bus, adjustment of passenger in e-bus, safety and security provision in e-bus as well. Next. In terms of economic and policy challenges, there's still a non-procurement process guideline for electric bus, and then business model itself is not clear considering the new technology involved, and total cost of ownership is still unclear due to the new adoption in Indonesia, and there is still no direct and specific incentive declared by the government. For example, for import fee, tax exempt, and then electrical spatial rates. And also contract length for the operators that will need maybe to be adjusted or to be re-evaluated as well for the deployment of electric bus performance. Next. So therefore, as Bert mentioned before, to accelerate the deployment of e-bus in Jakarta, so UNEP CTCN will give assistance to the city government of Jakarta and also Transjakarta. And then the objective of this assistance is to develop an investment plan to deploy a fleet of electric buses, and then to prepare the procurement document for e-bus inductions, and assess the policy requirement and action required by both city government, or our provincial government, and also national government to facilitate the deployment of e-bus and also the infrastructure. And last is develop a feasibility study of integrating renewable energy supply to the mobility operation of use in Transjakarta, including solar roofing for bus and MRT station, because we know that now our electricity grid is still using fossil fuel. Yeah, next. I think that's all for my presentations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Faila. It's very impressive how much progress is going on in Indonesia, particularly in Jakarta. In spite of the challenges that you had mentioned, really, I think many developing countries will find it useful to learn from the experience of in Indonesia. So I would not take much longer time. I think it would be good to proceed to the next city. And then as mentioned, if you have questions, please write your questions in the questions box or the chat box. And then we'll look at them at the end of the presentations. So the next topic is titled Supporting City Authorities to Develop Soot-Free Bus Strategies, the case of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And for this topic, we will have also two speakers. First is Ms. Jane Akumu, Program Officer of the United Nations Environment Program Air Quality and Mobility Unit, to be followed by Engineer Fanuel Calugendo, System Planning and Design Manager of Dar Rapid Transit. So I'll give the floor to you, Jane.
Thank you, Denise. I'll just make a quick introduction of the initiative in Africa before I hand over, as you say, to Fanuel, who is our implementing partner. Specifically on the soot-free buses, we have been or are planning to work with a few cities, Accra, Ghana, Nairobi, Kenya, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and Dakar, Senegal. And we've been working, partnering with the various agencies at national level, local government agency, regional economic bodies, and non-governmental agencies. We've also been supporting regional events where we bring together cities to share experiences and learn from each other. Specifically on this program with the DAT is a Dar es Salaam Rapid Transit Agency. It was formally launched in 2008, specifically to establish and operate a bus rapid transit system for Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and you'll hear more from them. UNEP's collaboration with DART started in 2009 to support a reduction of sulfur levels in diesel fuels, from 5,000 parts per million to 500 parts per million. Because at that time, DART was planning to import Euro 3 buses, and definitely 5,000 parts per million, which was a diesel fuel standard for East Africa then, was too high. And they were able to implement this program successfully, actually at national level. Today, Tanzania, as the rest of East Africa, is importing 10 parts per million diesel, thanks to the CCAC support and other funding. So the country also has CNG. So there are various options for that and Dar es Salaam to introduce soot-free buses. In 2020-2021 timeframe, and with funding from the CCAC, we are partnering with DART to transit to soot-free buses by doing 4 things. So the first is to assess soot-free bus technology options available for the city. Secondly, is doing cost-benefit analysis and cost of ownership assessments. The second thing is to develop a strategy and roadmap for soot-free bus implementation. Then thirdly, we'll be working with DART to draft soot-free bus standards. And lastly, to support training and outreach of soot-free bus technologies. So those are the 4 things that we are planning to do with DART this year and next year. And I think at this point, I would hand it over to DART to make the presentation.
Go ahead, Engineer Panuel. You can speak. Right now you are still muted, so maybe you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you so much. As I've been introduced, my name is Fanuel Kalugendo. I work for that agency as a system planning design manager. I've been here for now about 3 years, but I was involved in the project as part of my studies on the master's degree. I will just give you a snapshot on our system. As Jenny said, we are not yet implementing the soot-free buses. It's an area we are trying to explore with UNEP, but we want to share with you what we have been doing in transforming the public transport in Dar es Salaam, which is geared towards the same objective. So my presentation will cover about the public transport, background in public transport Dar es Salaam, the BRT system we're implementing, which is being branded as DART, Dar es Salaam Rapid Transit. Then what is to do with the soot-free buses. Then we have the next step in our implementation of the system. And then I will conclude my presentation. Some of you may not know Dar es Salaam is one of the fastest growing city in the world. We have annual growth of around 7.7%, which was between 2002 to 2012. It's a city which is highly populated in Tanzania, whereby 10% of the national population reside in Dar es Salaam. And we expect to have more than 10 million by 2030, and that makes it a mega city. But also in terms of the area coverage, it's a small city with a dense population, where with a density of 3,000.1 per square kilometer. But it's an important city in terms of our economic growth, as it's contribute about 10% per annum. but also it's the city with the highest annual vehicular growth in the country. So it may not be a bigger city, but we have a lot of vehicles around the city. When it comes to public transport history, we had a public transport company named the Dar es Salaam Motor Transit Company, DMT, by time 1949. This was much of owned by the colonialism. But later in 1970s, it was nationalized and it changed to establish the UDA. UDA is the acronym for Soot-Free Dar es Salaam, which was also a national-owned company. But due to the rapid increase in population and the growth of the city, the company and the government could not cope with the provision of the services. So in 1983, we privatized the public transport sector by involving the private sector to play some role. And that's why we introduced our urban buses, our small mini buses, which are commonly known as Daradara, to work together with the UDA to provide the public transport service in the city. But with those kind of transformation and the changes in the operation of the public transport, there have been a number of challenges which were being faced around that time scale. One was on poor infrastructure, but also insufficient. As we said, the population was increasing. We could not cope with the speed of providing infrastructure for road infrastructure to cut off all area of the city. But also the quality and health issues, as most of the buses, minibus, which was brought in by private sector, was second-hand buses, most of them from Japan. So they had a lot of emission and they are polluting the air. So that's another issue which you've been looking at. But the other issue was on capacity of the buses. They are minibuses. Most of the bigger ones had like a capacity of 35 to 40 passengers, but they operate on not on schedule. So that's another thing. You cannot rely on them. You know when the bus will come. Sometimes come is full, and you still have to wait the next one, which you don't know when it will be arriving. So with these issues and the other thing that they all complemented to the congestion in the city. So you find a lot of congestion. You could see some of the pictures. The second picture, that's the level of congestion we experience in the morning when we are going to work. As I show later, our city, the way it's been formed, you have a lot of traffic moving to the CBD in the morning and moving out to the CBD in the evening. So you may find a traffic queue of more than even 5 kilometers. And the first picture is up of the buses we are talking about, the Daradara, and the last picture is showing the level of emission which have been polluted by these small buses we are trying to operate. If you look on the mobility aspect in the city, our model fleet, most of the trips in Dar es Salaam are made by public transport and the non-motorized, either walking or cycling, which contribute about more than 88% of the all commuting activities. Although we said we had a high level of vehicular growth in the city, but still yet the private car play only 6% of the model fleet. And 6 is the others, which are either by ferry or by other motorcycle and the like. But apart from the Daradara, we are having other public services in the city where we are having BRT, which we have started the operation. We are having railway, commuter rail, which provide most of the commuting in the morning and the evening peak to assist the challenge of public transport in the city. But also there is some area which is being operated by the ferry, especially to the western side where we are crossing to other part of the city. Apart from the issue of the traffic and the infrastructure, the other issue was on the nature of our city. It's a monocentric city structure where the commuting pattern, as I said, morning you are going to the CBD and evening you are getting out of the CBD. It's like a finger palm kind of structure. So we have lateral roads going to the CBD and the evening they are coming out of the CBD. So from that perspective, you can see the public transport needed to be improved. It's crucial for our development and our city living standard because that's the only model we depend on. So the government with this challenge has to think what should be done, because you cannot let things continue as it was growing. The traffic jam will keep on growing. The working condition won't be good, and that the economy will be going down every day after day. This is a picture which we are trying to show the level. Now currently we're having more than 9,000 of the small buses, which we normally call Dara, and you can see how they emit in the city. So it's an issue which we thought as a government needed to be addressed and looked at it from the environment, but also from the economic perspective, if you want to cope with the sustainable development issues and the new urban agenda. This map is trying to show the network. We have a bigger network. All these roads, major roads, are operated by Daradaras. Route which are the spiral roads and aggressive congestion. So you may find along this maybe Morogoro Road, the congestion is more than 5 kilometers. You go to Nyerere Road, you find a lot of congestion. So everywhere you find a lot of congestion, and that's where Darada they share with the other mode of transport. They share the same facilities. So these issues and challenges was, okay, what should be done? So as the government had to come up with a solution, how do we transform our public transport in the restaurant? So we added a number of studies, we have to consider a number of options, which include the light rail transit, underground metro, urban rail, and the bus rapid transit. Due to our economic position and the ease of scalability, we adopted the bus rapid transit because of the cost of implementing the infrastructure, but also the ease of the availability of the technology and ease of downscaling to our local context. So the picture you see on the left corner, up on the left corner, is our BRT system, which is a full BRT with the segregated right of way, and it have our scheduled bus with the station in the middle of the road and with the level boarding with the bus to provide the best system for the city. Currently, we are operating around 140 buses, whereby we have articulated buses, which are about 39 of them, and we have 12-meter bus, which is around 110, 111. So, and we are operating only the first corridor out of the 6 we are planning to do, which covers around 20.9 kilometers. But the total plan is to do 146.2 of dedicated BRT lanes. But this one is operation since 2016. And we started with the ridership of around 75,000 passengers a day. But currently we are going up to 200,000 passengers a day, which give us indication that the system has been accepted and is appreciated by the city residents. These are the characteristics of our BRT system, which we've been implementing. As I said, it's a fully segregated lane, the median station and the median with the passing lane at the station to allow the express services or the bus to pass if they are not picking around the passengers. But also we are providing off-bus fare correction. You needed to buy a ticket before you enter to the buses. So with the turnstile and we use card, we use barcode ticket, but also the bus with the same flow, the station to allow the ease of boarding and arriving. Apart from the BRT infrastructure which is being provided, we also, under the project, when we do the BRT, along the corridor, we do improve the walking and cycling. As I said, you could see these are the two models, the public transport and the NMTs, meaning the walking and cyclists, are contributing to 8% of the daily commuting. So we thought we take advantage of the project also to improve the walking facilities and cycling facilities along the corridor. And this will be done along the entire 146 kilometers of the dedicated lane we are going to implement. So this is part of the BRT phase 1. You could see the road and people they are using, they are enjoying the facilities. The way our system works, as we said, we are trying to integrate to make sure it's not working in isolation on a silo. We are integrating the services. As you could see, we have express, we have the trunk, but also we have the feeder. And the feeder, some of the feeder are operated by our buses, 12-meter buses. And our idea is to have the trunk service being operated by the 18-meter buses, the articulated buses. So far, we are trying to make sure we have common terminals where we can converge a number of lines. Like for now, we have one terminal which is called the Grezan, where we'll be converting all buses from corridor 1, corridor 2, corridor 3, and we are trying to see if we can bring the service from corridor 4, so that the people, passenger can transfer easier from one terminal to another. Also, the same is done in another terminal which is called the Ubungo, to make sure that the services are integrated, but also the infrastructure around for that integration. But also we are working on transport and land use issues. We want to implement the transit-oriented development. Currently, we have tried to develop the corridor development strategy to allow for that. And there's some areas which we have picked for demonstration for that kind of, to densify the corridor so that we can make some short commuting trips along the corridor, and that benefits the ridership of the system. But also we are trying to integrate our BRT with another mode of transit, like ferry, daradara. You could see the picture below there. Is we have when we did the BRT, we put the station for daradara so that passenger can come with the daradara and they get out. They just go to the BRT station through the pedestrian bridge. But also we want to integrate with the new ongoing standard gauge railway, which is under construction. We're going to put another terminal for BRT so that somebody, passenger, can come from the SGR and go to the bus rapid transit to do the part of his rush commuting trip. The same is being done to integrate our BRT with the airport, where under the corridor 3, where which is passed through the airport, we're going to link with our BRT, and we already designed the integration facility terminal at that airport. But also, as I said, we are trying to look on the infrastructure between the different corridors and make sure they are well aligned so that the system does not work around. When it comes to soot-free buses, we have not done much like our colleague in Jakarta, but we are on the early stages. As Jenny explained, we are trying to work together with Jen and the team. First, we have improved the current using the improved engine for our buses. We are currently using Euro 3 diesel engine, but now as we are preparing for procurement of more buses, we want to move to Euro 4 to 6. But also we want to look on CNG and electric, and by developing the strategy and the standards. But also we have another project we are working with the German-based initiative called the UMI, Electric Urban Mobility Initiative, to introduce the electric Bajaj. This is the 3-wheeler, which will be integrating with our BRT terminals. So these are kind of the initiative we are putting in place, maybe to start to look what we can do to reduce that one. Maybe this one I don't have to repeat. Jenny already explained when we started the partnership with the UNEP environment since 2009, and we are still working with them up today to assist us developing those guidelines for introduction of the e-buses and looking at e-mobility perspective. The next step, as we said, we want to start now to complete the procurement of the buses. Currently, we have 140, but we want to have 305. But also introduction of more improved technology in terms of the bus, but also continue implementing the infrastructure phase 2 and 3. Currently, phase 2 is ongoing. The contractor on site is going to be 20.3 another kilometer of dedicated road, and we expect to complete them by 2023 and start the operation. But the design for phase 3 and 4 and 5 is done, and we are soon start programming of the contractor to start the infrastructure. Our major aim is by 2025 to have at least phase 2, 3, and 4 operation, and possibly phase 5 also. But by 2030, we need all the system to be operation, and maybe by that time we start already look at the introduction of the electric buses to the entire system. This is the network, the ridership, the level of the demand. You can see there is an urgent demand on those corridors, and this has been a demand study which is done to guide our conceptual design and the upgrading of our network in the city. This is the full network by 2030 when we talk about the entire 6 phases with the 146.2 kilometer, which include the trunk and the feeder. The trunk is the one with red, and the green one will be the feeder lines, but also be operated by the bigger buses with the larger capacity. And our expectation is to have a fleet of about 1,308 accredited buses doing the trunk services, and 2,050 buses doing the feeder services. And we expect to have a passenger of around 2.4 million passengers per weekday. So this is our figure which we look forward to be implementing. In conclusion, we are saying we are still eager to complete the replacement of the radar by removing the radar and transforming the public transport in the city by introducing a better system, and thus reducing the green gas emission and global warming, and to improve air quality, also by putting the bus which are better engine and but with lower emission, and make sure that our buses and our system is environmental friendly, but also meet the international standard. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Engineer Fanuel and Jane. It's really, how do I say, comforting to hear that you are integrating all of these projects and planning, because it's very often that in many developing countries, like each project is working in silos, but the fact that you're connecting it with the other modes and including active transport, walking and cycling, so that's really very good to hear. So we don't have much time for questions and answers, but maybe I'll invite the other presenters as well to share your webcam so that the colleagues can see your faces. I'll just take a few questions from the questions box. The first question, how to download the presentation somewhere. So we will be sending the copies of the presentation to all of the participants after this webinar. And then there are a few questions for Fanuel and a few questions for Fayla. So I'll maybe start with the questions for Fayla. From Henry Kamau, what is the infrastructure cost of the charging system and its return of investment? From Vicky Ferrer, she was asking what is the projected effect of electric buses on ambient air? And I'll just read also a comment from Mr. Suryanto Ibrahim. Important thing to consider in developing public transportation in cities is systems thinking. Like a tree, public transportation services must get to the leaves. Like Jakarta, public transportation services are still limited to tree trunks, not yet the leaves. So it is still a bit problematic, the traffic jam and air pollution. And then for Engineer Fanuel, are Dara providing a feeder service to DART or competing with DART? Are Dara providing a feeder service to DART or, yeah, I just repeated the question. And also, what is the modal shift in Dar es Salaam from Dara users to the BRT users after the introduction of DART Phase 1? That's a question from Insan Ridho Cheruasni. Also a question from, I'm just reading it all out so that you can respond to whichever. And then as mentioned, if not all questions are responded to, we will respond in writing. What emission standards for heavy duty vehicle engines and LDV are adopted in the country? This is by Stella. So maybe I'll first give the floor to Faila. Would you like to respond to some of the questions? Sorry, you are still muted.
Should I go or should Farah start?
Yeah, I think both of us. Yeah. Is it like infrastructure? First is the infrastructure cost of the e-bus, and then second is projected cost for TOC, and then what is the third? Can you repeat it again?
The effect on ambient air as well. Maybe you can take that question.
Yeah, actually, responding to the first and second questions of the infrastructure cost and projected cost of the implementation of e-bus, because it's still on a pilot progress. So we still need to calculate the future investment on the infrastructure and projected cost. So currently I cannot share with all of you, but maybe there is a study done by ADB that there is some figure on that, but that's our duty. On the CTCN and UNEP study that the output will be the cost of the infrastructure and then the cost of the TOC. So they're still under study. And then the effect on the ambient of the weather in Jakarta, yeah, there's still under discussion here in between Transjakarta as well and the bus provider, actually, whether like the longevity of the what is it called, the battery will be long enough if in this kind of weather, what is the impact of the heat on the battery, and then the usage of the air conditioner, because not many cities have similar weather as us. So cities like China, they have winter as well. But here in because we are in Katulistiwa, so all of the year we have like a hot weather. So this also still on the trial. So yeah, maybe if someone can share the experience with us, I think that will be very good. And then there's also still a big question on our discussions between Transjakarta and the bus provider. Sorry if I cannot answer all of the questions because we are still on the trial progress now.
That's
Okay,
fine. Go ahead, Fanuel.
Yes, I think I had two, if not three, some questions. The one was about the feeder provision in our system. Our system is designed for two-level network. We have the trunk service and the feeder services. And when we bring in the service provider, you always get a contract to provide both. The feeder, the trunk service within the dedicated corridor, but also feeder which run on the mixed traffic. And if you saw the map I presented, we have the green network, which is the feeder lines. But so far, they don't compete with the existing urban daradara. Whenever the corridor start operation the corridor, we remove the daradara so that they don't compete because the passengers are the same. We cannot have two systems competing to each other. And our idea at the end of the day, we need to replace the Daradara with the better buses. Just why we want to get them rid of the Daradara around the city. So that's the way the arrangement is. But what we are trying to think, there is an area where we think we cannot have a feeder operation because of the cost. That's why we think we need to talk with our colleague who are regulating the public transport in the city. How best they can have some other services like Bajaj, electric Bajaj, or Daradara operating those on the outskirts of the city. But as long as in the network we're having, we don't compete with the Daradara and we have the feeder as part of our operation. With to do the model share after introduction of the so far BRT and the Daradara are taking the same share, which we say the 43% of the model fleet. Because so far we are on one corridor, it's not difficult to say we have a model share to BRT is this much, because most of the trip is done in connection between they transfer from Daradara, they come to BRT, then later they go to Daradara, because we just operate around the one corridor. The trip is done in multiple modes. So maybe once we have a bit bigger network, we have to go down back and see the model split, how much is being shared, taken only by BRT only, and from home to the work and back to home, and how much is done in terms of two modes, either Radar and BRT. So far, I don't have exact figure, but I know the ridership number, that's what we can share at this moment.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have more time to continue the discussion, but as mentioned, we have recorded your questions in the questions box, and if others have still questions, please write them down, and then we will try to respond to all questions in writing. Thank you so much for everyone who participated. We'd like to thank as well all our speakers and panelists, Fanuel, Fela, Bert, and Jane. And also we'd really like to recognize our partners working on the ground, including UNEP and ICCT, that's been leading the implementation of the work of the CCAC's heavy duty vehicles initiative. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you again in other webinars. For your information, we have part 2 of the webinar tomorrow. It will be at 3 p.m. Central European summertime, or 3 p.m. in Paris. And it will be talking about another 2 interesting cities, Bangalore, India, and Johannesburg in South Africa, and also some updates of the work in Soot-Free buses in Latin America. So we hope to see some of you there if it's convenient for your time. And thank you very much. We wish you a pleasant day. Stay safe and healthy. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.